My name is Catherine Miller. I am 31 years old. Last Sunday, at my younger brother's engagement dinner, my mother introduced me to his fiancé's family. She smiled that exact smile she had practiced for years, soft, warm, almost flawless. The same smile she gave neighbors, acquaintances, and people whose names she forgot 5 minutes later. "This is our eldest daughter," she said. "She cleans houses." My father nodded in silence, without a pause, without hesitation, as if that were the only truth worth knowing about me. 20 people were sitting at the table. A white tablecloth, neatly arranged silverware, glasses reflecting the chandelier light. Everything looked perfect, like a scene from a commercial where a happy family celebrates a milestone. But in the very next second, everything changed. The fiancé's mother, a woman I had met 3 years ago under completely different circumstances, slowly set down her fork, looked at me intently, and said softly, "Wait, is that you?" I felt my mother tense up, as if the air in the room had suddenly grown thicker. The next 40 minutes destroyed what had been held together in our family for years. Not because of a single word, not because of a single dinner, but because the truth they had tried to hide for nearly 10 years finally came to light. To understand what happened at that table, you have to go back 10 years. Because that evening was not the beginning, it was the finale. I grew up in the small town of Riverton, Ohio. Population just over 8,000. The kind of place where people know what car your father drives and what pie your mother bakes on Sundays. My father, Richard Miller, worked at an insurance company. 32 years in one office, one desk, one position. He got it at 30 and never once tried to change anything. My mother, Ellen, was different. Smart, fast, calculating. Before I was born, she managed bookkeeping for several companies at once. She could do math in her head faster than others could pull out a calculator. Then I came along. My father decided it was time for her to stay home. She agreed, but as I realized later, she never accepted it. Not me, not my brother. She just learned to live with it. My brother Daniel is 3 years younger than me. He is 28 now. He was always the favorite. Not because he was better, but because he met expectations. Good grades, university, a career in marketing, promotions every 18 months. Every achievement of his became a family event. Everyone was a reason to call me. Not to share the joy, but to make sure I knew. Our living room wall displays our family history. Daniel's diplomas, his awards, photos from his work. My photos stop at my college graduation. 4 years of study, and that was it. The last thing they believed made any sense. When I was 22, I had a degree in business administration and a clear plan. My mother had one too. She enrolled me in a master's program, paid the deposit, told all her acquaintances, printed out the curriculum, and left it on my nightstand. As a reminder, as a command. I told her I was not going. It was an ordinary Thursday evening. We were sitting at the kitchen table. I opened a folder. Inside were calculations, market research, and a financial plan. "I am starting a cleaning company," I said. She did not look into the folder. 14 seconds of silence. I counted, because silence in our house always meant something. "You want to clean other people's toilets?" she asked finally. There was no anger in her voice, only coldness. My father walked into the kitchen at that moment. "I already told my colleagues about your master's degree," he said. And that was it. The conversation was over. The only person who asked to see my numbers was my grandmother, Margaret. She was 69. She read everything, every page. "Show me where you will be in 3 years," she said. I showed her. She nodded and gave me $1,000 from her savings. "For the hard days," she said. That night, my mother said that if I wanted to clean other people's houses, I would do it without her help. She stopped supporting me completely. I packed my things and left. No drama, no yelling. I just left. My first apartment cost $500 a month. 1 room, an old radiator that made noise at night, and a window overlooking a parking lot. I bought a used van, my first company. No logo, no advertising, just me and the work. My first client appeared after 2 weeks. My second job came through acquaintances. Then another and another. I worked 12 to 14 hours a day. Sometimes without days off, sometimes unsure if I would have enough for rent. But I did not go back home. Returning would mean admitting they were right, and I could not do that. Not then, and never after. 3 years passed. I had 5 employees, 10 regular clients, and contracts with 2 office buildings. I started earning more than my father, but my family did not know that because they were not interested. To them, I was still the one who cleans. That was probably their biggest mistake. Because at some point, the truth finds a way out, even if you try to hide it. And that evening, at that dinner, it finally came into the light. When the fiancé's mother looked at me and asked, "Is that you?" I realized things would end differently than my mother had planned, because some people remember more than it seems, and some meetings change the future, even if they happen only once. 3 years ago, in Chicago. Back then, I was just starting to reach a new level. I already had 2 crews, my own website, and several corporate clients. Most importantly, I began taking orders for luxury residential properties. Not just apartments, but estates and mansions owned by people whose money is not counted in thousands. An agency managing luxury property called me. "You were recommended to us," the woman said. "We have a large property that needs regular cleaning. The owners are very demanding." I agreed. She sent me the address. I remember that day down to the smallest detail, because it was the first time I realized I was no longer just a girl with a rag. I arrived at the house at 7:40 a.m. Massive gates, cameras, a long driveway, a white mansion that looked built for status rather than living. I checked the address 3 times, thinking I had made a mistake. But I had not. A woman opened the door. Elegant, reserved, without unnecessary jewelry. She had something you cannot buy: control. "Are you Catherine?" she asked. "Yes." "Come in." She did not introduce herself immediately, but I remembered her gaze. She did not look at my clothes or my hands. She looked as if she were evaluating a system. Me, my approach, my confidence. "My name is Victoria Lawson," she said a minute later. That was the first time I heard the name. I did not attach any importance to it until I saw the house from the inside. It was not just a cleaning job, it was an evaluation. Every room, every surface, every corner. But not in the usual way. She observed without interfering, occasionally asking questions. "How many employees do you have? How do you manage your time? What do you do if a client is dissatisfied?" It felt less like a conversation with a client and more like an interview. After 2 hours, she said, "You are not like the others." I did not answer because I did not know what that meant. She nodded. "Good. You will work for us once a week." It was the most expensive contract I had at that point, but it was not about the money. A month later, she offered me something else. "I have acquaintances," she said, "people who need your level of service." That was when everything changed. Over the next year, my business tripled. I stopped working hands-on every day. I managed, built systems, hired people, and trained them the way no one had trained me. My name started being passed around without ads or a website, purely through recommendations. Almost all of them came through her, Victoria Lawson. We did not become friends, but something else formed between us: respect. She never asked about my family, and I never asked about hers. But sometimes, after inspecting the work, she would ask strange questions. "Why didn't you go back home?" The first time I stayed silent. The second time I answered, "Because then none of this would have made sense." She looked at me for a long time and nodded. "I understand." That was all, but I knew she truly understood. Now back to the dinner, to the present moment, to the moment my mother said, "She cleans houses." Victoria Lawson raised her eyes. "Wait, is that you?" The room went quiet. My brother looked at his fiancée, who looked at her mother. My mother tensed. "Do you know each other?" my mother asked, trying to keep her smile. Victoria straightened up slowly. "Yes, very well." I did not interfere because I knew it would happen on its own now. "Catherine runs a company," Victoria continued, "one of the most reliable service companies I have ever worked with." My mother did not understand right away. "Yes, she cleans," she repeated, a bit quieter. Victoria tilted her head slightly. "No," she said, "she builds a business, and she does it better than most people I know." A long, uncomfortable pause followed. My father looked at me for the first time all evening, really looked at me. "A company?" he asked. I shrugged. "For several years now." My brother frowned. "You never said anything." I looked at him. "You never asked." It did not end there because Victoria did not stop. "To be precise," she added, "over the last 3 years, she built a system that serves some of the most demanding clients in this city." Now everyone was looking at me differently. Not as the one who failed expectations, but as an unknown variable. "How many employees do you have?" someone asked from the other end of the table. I answered calmly, 23. My mother lowered her gaze. For the first time, I saw something other than irritation or coldness on her face. Doubt. Then Victoria said what finally changed everything. "You know," she remarked, "when I first met Catherine, I thought she had chosen the wrong field." My mother raised her head. Victoria looked directly at her. Because people with that mindset usually don't start from scratch. They arrive already prepared. Absolute silence. In that silence, for the first time in 10 years, my mother did not know what to say. Truth demands a reaction, and the reaction came. "Why didn't you say anything?" my father asked. I looked at him and answered honestly, "Because you had already decided everything for me." He wanted to say something, but he couldn't, because it was the truth, and he knew it. Dinner continued, but differently. People asked questions, listened, and showed genuine interest. The irony was that I didn't need to prove anything to them, but it turned out the truth requires no effort, only a moment. That moment had finally arrived. When dinner ended, guests began to leave. I was standing near the exit when my mother approached me. She was silent for a few seconds, then said, "You could have told us earlier." I looked at her. "You could have asked." She closed her eyes briefly, as if something inside her shifted. "I thought," she began, but didn't finish. Because for the first time, she understood it was not about what she thought, but about what she didn't want to know. Nothing was fixed that night. Things didn't become perfect. We didn't hug or apologize. But something changed deep down. They saw me for the first time, the real me, not the version they had invented. Sometimes that is enough for things to start changing, even if it is almost too late. The morning after the dinner, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I had to work, but because yesterday's words were still echoing in my head. The tone, the pauses, the glances. Strangely, I felt neither triumph nor anger, only quietness. As if something that had been pressing from the inside for a long time was finally gone. My phone rang at 8:12. Daniel. I looked at the screen for a few seconds before answering. "Hello," I said. He didn't answer right away. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked, not with accusation, but confusion. I sighed. "What would have changed?" A pause. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but it's strange to find out like this." "For me, it was strange living with it for 10 years, I replied calmly. He exhaled quietly. "Mom," he started. "I don't want to talk about Mom right now," I interrupted. Another pause. "Will you come over today?" he asked. "Why?" "Just to talk." I thought about it. Before I would have refused, but now something was different. "All right," I said. The house hadn't changed. Same smell, same furniture, same precise sense of correctness. But the feeling was different, as if I entered not as part of the system, but as an outsider. My mother sat at the kitchen table holding a coffee cup, not drinking it. My father stood by the window. Daniel met my gaze nervously. "Thanks for coming," he said. I nodded and took off my coat. "Let's get straight to it," I said. "No long intros." My mother looked up. "All right," she said quietly. That alone was unusual. Before, she always controlled the conversation. Now she didn't. "I don't understand," she began. "How did this happen?" I smiled slightly. "You never tried to understand. You just decided you knew how it would end and stopped looking further." My father turned around. "We wanted the best for you," he said. I looked at him. "No, you wanted what was understandable." It was a difference they had never admitted, but now they heard it. "You could have come back," my mother said. "Where?" I asked calmly. She didn't answer because there was no answer. Returning meant giving up on myself, and now that was obvious even to her. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "I really didn't know," he said. "I thought, well, that I failed?" I finished for him. He looked away. "Yes," I nodded, "because that's what you were told." He said nothing, and that was enough. The conversation lasted nearly 2 hours. No yelling, no accusations, just the truth we had avoided for years. Then something unexpected happened. My mother said, "I was afraid." I looked at her. "Of what?" She paused for a long time. "That you would fail, and then it would be my mistake too." I exhaled slowly. There it was. Not control, not coldness, but fear and responsibility she didn't want to bear. "So you decided it was better if I didn't try at all?" I asked. She closed her eyes. "Yes." Honest, harsh, but for the first time, completely honest. I didn't know what to answer right away. Part of me wanted to be angry, but the other part saw no point in it anymore. "I was wrong," she added softly, almost in a whisper. Those were words I had never heard from her in my entire life. We didn't hug or cry. We didn't become a perfect family. But something shifted deep inside, unnoticed from the outside, but permanent. A week after that conversation, my mother called me herself. "Do you have time?" she asked. "Yes." "I would like to see how you work." I went quiet for a second. "All right," I said. It was perhaps the strangest and most important step, not for me, but for her. When she first walked into one of the properties my company serviced, I watched her the way Victoria had once watched me. She looked, analysed, noticed details, and barely spoke for an hour. Then she turned to me. "This is a system," she said. I nodded. "Yes." She ran her hand over a table, and her voice sounded different, without condescension or doubt. "This is a business." I didn't answer because I didn't need to. She finally saw it. A month later, she offered to help. Not to control or manage, but to help with bookkeeping and optimization, the things she had always been good at. I agreed. Not immediately, but I agreed. Because now it wasn't an imposition. It was a choice, hers and mine. Daniel calls sometimes. We didn't become close overnight, but we became honester, and that matters more. As for Victoria Lawson, she texted me the day after the dinner. Just one message. "Now they know. The question is, what will you do with it?" I looked at the screen for a long time, then replied, "Nothing. I already did everything." She didn't write back, but I knew that was enough. 6 months have passed. My company grew to 30 employees and we opened another division. I no longer think about proving anything to anyone because the main proof is the result, and it is already there. Sometimes people ask if I feel bitter about those years. Before, yes. Now, no. Because those years made me who I am, not in spite of them, but because of them. If my mother had said 10 years ago, "All right, try it," maybe things would have been easier, but not necessarily better. Easy paths rarely lead to where you truly belong. At that dinner, my mother introduced me as the one who cleans houses. In essence, she wasn't wrong. I really did start with that. She just failed to see what it turned into. Now she sees, and that is enough. Sometimes the truth doesn't change the past, but it changes how you look at it, which means it changes everything. Perhaps that is the real ending to any story. Not the moment of victory, but the moment of understanding, when you no longer need to prove anything to them or to yourself.